Okay, today's lesson is area models and equivalent fractions. Okay, well, before we get started, let's define a fraction and identify its parts. This part here is nothing new. Fraction is a part of a whole. Okay, and a fraction has two parts. It has the numerator, which is the top number, and that is the number of selected parts. And then there's the denominator, and that's the total number of parts. So in the fraction 3/4, the 3 is the numerator, and the 4 is the denominator. So it would look something like this. The 3/4 could be represented by this model right here. I have 4 equal parts. So that, of course, is my denominator. And so 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to shade in 3 of them. So that's my 3 selected parts, 3 out of 4, or 3/4. So when we're looking at area models, our first step is to count the total number of pieces. And then step 2, count the shaded pieces. Okay, so that's what it means to have an area model. We have 4 pieces. We've shaded 3 of them, so this area model represents the fraction 3/4. Okay, so now let's talk about equivalent fractions. Those are fractions that names the same part of a whole. So, for example, 3/4 is the same as 6/8, is the same as 9/12, is the same as 12/16, and the same as 15/20. All of these fractions represent the same part of a whole. So, how did I determine that? Well, what I did is I multiplied the top and the bottom by the same number. So, for example, 3/4 times 2 times 2 equals 6/8. 3/4 times 3 on the numerator and times 3 on the denominator is 9/12. And how about this one? 3/4 times 4 equals 12/16. Okay? So do you see how when I multiplied the top and the bottom by the same number, these are the fractions I got. They equal the same thing. 6/8 is the same as 3/4. 9/12 is the same as 3/4. And 12/16 is the same as 3/4. We can make equivalent fractions by following what I call the golden rule of fractions. It's how we create equivalent fractions. My golden rule of fractions is do the same to the top as you do to the bottom. And that's how we create equivalent fractions. We multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. Okay, now we're going to throw in a little bit here about simplifying fractions. And we're going to get lots of practice on this. Okay, so you simplify fractions by dividing the numerator and the denominator by the GCF, which is the greatest common factor, which we learned how to find that out earlier this week. So let's say I want to simplify 6/8, this fraction right here. Okay, I'm going to simplify 6/8. Well, first I have to find the greatest common factor. And I do that by making my T-charts. And listing the factors of both the numerator and the denominator. So I have 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. My denominator, I have 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. My common factors are 1 and 2. And what's the biggest number there? 2. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 2. So 6/8 divided by 2 divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And look at that. 6/8 simplifies to 3/4. Well, look up here. 3/4 is equal to 6/8. And then I do it backwards when I simplify. 6/8 is equal to 3/4. Okay. Let's try another one. Let's try simplifying 15/35. Okay, well remember, simplify says I got to divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor. So I'm going to make my t-chart for 15 and 35. So my factors for 15 are 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. My factors for 35 are 1 times 35 and 5 times 7. And my common factors are 1 and 5. My greatest common factor is 5. So I'm going to take 15/35, and I'm going to divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor, which was 5. Okay. 15 divided by 5 is 3, because 3 times 5 is 15. And 35 divided by 5 is 7, because 7 times 5 is 35. And so 15/35, when simplified, is 3/7. So 3/7 is the same, it is equivalent to 15/35. All right. Ooh, that's it for today.